In the heart of Kenya, where tradition and modernity often clash, a tale of trust and betrayal unfolds, a story that shook the nation and highlighted the dark undercurrents of family and military life. This is the story of Joyce Sayombiwa and Major Peter Mwaura, whose lives intersected in a tragic series of events that would captivate the nation and leave a lasting impact on their community. Joyce was born around the late 1980s, making her approximately 31 years old in 2019. She was raised in a modest, loving household by her single mother. The absence of her father in her life meant that Joyce's upbringing was largely shaped by her mother's efforts and values. They shared a close-knit relationship, characterized by a strong bond and mutual support, embodying an us-against-the-world mentality. Joyce's mother placed a high value on education, despite the financial and social challenges they faced. She worked tirelessly to ensure that Joyce received a quality education, making sacrifices to provide for her daughter's schooling needs. Her educational journey began in primary school, after which she attended St. Bernard's High School in Nairobi. It was during her high school years that she met two individuals who would significantly impact her life, Farizana and Peter Mwaura. Farizana became Joyce's best friend. The two girls shared not only a deep friendship but also a name similarity, which they found endearing. Their bond was immediate and strong, growing deeper as they navigated the ups and downs of adolescence together. Even as adults, Joyce and Farizana remained inseparable, constantly staying in touch through texts and chats. The second pivotal figure in Joyce's life was Peter Mwaura. Peter, 3 years older than Joyce, met her when she was around 16 or 17 years old. The attraction between them was mutual and swift, typical of teenage romances. Peter was captivated by Joyce, describing her as someone special, a babe who he felt was destined for him. Despite their youth, Peter was serious about his intentions. He resolved that once Joyce graduated from high school and he completed his studies, they would marry. In 2005, Peter Mwaura, deeply enamored with Joyce Sayombiwa, decided it was time to introduce her to his family. This gesture was a significant step, as Peter viewed Joyce as his future wife, and wanted to solidify this bond with the approval of his family. He took Joyce to meet his mother, Hannah Mwaura, who, along with the rest of the family, welcomed Joyce warmly. At the time, Joyce was only 17, but her youth did not hinder her from making a strong impression on Peter's family. Hannah, in particular, was so taken with Joyce that she visited Joyce's home to meet her mother, Elizabeth, and formally ask for Joyce's hand in marriage. The families agreed that once Joyce completed her high school education, the young couple would marry. During this period, Peter was studying civil engineering at the University of Nairobi. Despite the plans for marriage, the couple faced a significant challenge when they had a severe breakup in 2006, just a year after Peter had introduced Joyce to his family. The breakup was so definitive that Peter's family assumed the relationship had ended permanently. They reportedly did not hear from Joyce again, believing that any plans for marriage were off the table. However, contrary to these assumptions, Joyce and Peter rekindled their relationship after Joyce graduated from high school in 2009. They married that same year, a fact that came as a surprise to Peter's family, who were unaware of the nuptials until after the fact. The couple moved to Ongata Rongai, where Peter had secured a house for them. From the outside, their marriage might have seemed idyllic, but it was far from perfect. The relationship was marked by severe issues, including allegations of domestic abuse. Those close to the couple described the environment as toxic, with frequent fights and accusations. Peter, in particular, was described as a person who displayed a stark contrast between his public and private behavior. Publicly, he presented an image of a loving husband in a happy marriage, but behind closed doors, the reality was much different. Joyce, on her part, was candid with her friends and family about the difficulties she faced in her marriage. She confided in her mother and friends that her relationship with Peter was fraught with problems and was not what she had hoped for. The situation worsened when Joyce became pregnant with their first child, Shanice. Instead of bringing them closer, the pregnancy became a new source of tension. Peter began accusing Joyce of infidelity, doubting the paternity of the unborn child. Despite her reassurances and the obvious timing that suggested otherwise, Peter's suspicions persisted. The stress and emotional abuse took a toll on Joyce. At 8 months pregnant, she decided she had had enough and left Peter, returning to her mother's home in Keole. It was there, surrounded by her mother's support, that Joyce gave birth to her daughter, Shanice. The separation allowed Joyce to regain some stability. She started working at a local bakery to support her daughter and mother. Several years later, Peter reached out to Joyce, expressing regret and a desire to reconcile. He claimed to miss Joyce and their daughter, and wanted to rebuild their family. By this time, Joyce had established a life for herself and her daughter. Nevertheless, she agreed to give the marriage another chance, and the couple reunited. However, the old issues quickly resurfaced. Shortly after their reconciliation, Joyce became pregnant again, and Peter resumed his accusations of infidelity. The cycle of distrust and conflict seemed unbreakable. Despite the ongoing strife, Joyce gave birth to their second child, Prince Michael. This second pregnancy and birth did little to ease the tensions between them. Instead, the accusations and disputes continued, particularly concerning the children's paternity. Peter's doubts escalated to the point where he stopped supporting the family financially, leading to another separation in 2014. The final separation marked a significant turning point. Peter's family, who had previously been unaware of the couple's issues, became involved. When Joyce and Peter separated, it was Peter's relatives who came to collect his belongings from their shared home. Joyce's mother, Elizabeth, recounted that Peter's relatives were not just indifferent but outright hostile towards Joyce, reinforcing the notion that they never truly accepted her as part of their family. Joyce, weary of the constant negativity, decided to move on and sought refuge at her mother's home. While staying with her mother, Elizabeth, she learned that Peter was spreading rumors around town, claiming that their children, Shanice and Michael, were not his, and accusing Joyce of infidelity. Outraged by these accusations, Elizabeth and Joyce decided to take legal action. They sought to hold Peter accountable for child support and the welfare of the children, despite his insistence that they were not his biological children. The court proceedings led to a pivotal moment when a DNA test was ordered to establish paternity. However, during the process, a disturbing incident occurred. Joyce's mother recounted that during the week when the children's DNA samples were to be collected, an unidentified woman approached Shanice and Michael on their way home from school. Pretending to be a teacher, she offered them food and drink. Michael, noticing something suspicious, decided they should take the drinks home instead of consuming them immediately. When they got home, a visitor drank the soda meant for the children and fell unconscious. This incident led to speculation that Peter might have been involved in an attempt to harm the children to avoid the paternity test. Despite the unsettling experience, the DNA tests were eventually completed, confirming that Peter was indeed the father of Shanice and Michael. The court ruled in Joyce's favor, ordering Peter to pay child support and cover additional expenses like rent and school fees. This decision did not sit well with Peter, who felt burdened by the financial responsibilities, especially since he was no longer with Joyce. He resented the payments, believing they facilitated Joyce's lifestyle, which he assumed included relationships with other men. Peter's life began to unravel further. He had a career setback after crashing a plane, which led to his transfer from the Mwaura Air Base to the Laikipia Air Base. Isolated in his new assignment and grappling with a tarnished reputation, Peter faced professional and personal difficulties. He felt estranged from his children, who remembered him only through negative experiences, and he was not on speaking terms with Joyce. This series of events, combined with his challenging career situation, reportedly led to Peter suffering from depression. Meanwhile, Joyce continued to live her life, focusing on her children and navigating the complex dynamics of her relationship with Peter and his family. In October 2019, Joyce Sayombiwa faced a challenging situation. Her estranged husband, Peter, who had visitation rights over their children, reached out with a seemingly benign request. He invited Joyce and their children to visit him at his air base in Laikipia before their daughter Shanice's birthday on November 1. Peter's intention, he claimed, was to reconnect with his children, whom he had not seen for a long time. To show his goodwill, Peter even offered to send bus fare for the trip, emphasizing that he had no malicious intentions. Despite Peter's reassurances, Joyce's mother, Elizabeth, had a premonition that something might go wrong. She expressed strong concerns about the safety of Joyce and the children, urging them to reconsider the visit. However, Joyce felt legally obligated to comply with the visitation rights granted to Peter and decided to proceed with the visit. On October 25, 2019, Joyce and her children left for Laikipia. Throughout the journey, Joyce kept in touch with her close friend Farizana and her mother, updating them on her whereabouts. Upon their arrival, everything seemed normal initially. Joyce informed Farizana of their safe arrival, and the day passed without incident. The next morning, October 26, Joyce's communication took a distressing turn. At 8 a.m., she called Farizana in a state of panic, reporting that her children were missing. According to Joyce, Peter had taken the children out but had not returned them. Peter had assured her that the children were safe with a friend and that he wanted to have a private conversation with her. Farizana advised Joyce to calm down and talk things over with Peter, promising to check in later in the evening. However, as evening fell, Farizana's calls went unanswered. She reached out to Elizabeth, who also couldn't contact Joyce. Panic set in as they realized something was terribly wrong. Both Farizana and Elizabeth decided to take immediate action and reported Joyce and the children as missing at their respective local police stations. Farizana went to the Nanyuki police station, where she reported the missing persons and described the situation. The police acted swiftly, tracking Joyce's phone to a location associated with a matatu, public service vehicle. The phone was found at the 4NT Sacco station, with the manager explaining that a cleaner had discovered it seemingly hidden. Simultaneously, Elizabeth reported the case at the Sawito police station. The police contacted Peter, who claimed ignorance about the whereabouts of his family. Distressed, Peter visited the Nanyuki police station on October 28, filing his own missing persons report. He appeared agitated and desperate, seeking assistance in locating Joyce and the children. The investigating officer, Mr. Kiptu, began scrutinizing the case. He found Peter's claims inconsistent with the accounts provided by Farizana and Elizabeth, who painted Peter as a problematic and potentially dangerous individual. They alleged that Peter was abusive and had taken the children under suspicious circumstances. Peter's explanation to Mr. Kiptu was elaborate. He claimed that he had invited Joyce and the children to reconnect before his daughter's birthday. He admitted to taking the children to a friend in Meru County, which he described as a temporary measure to have a private conversation with Joyce. Peter explained that he had intended to reunite Joyce and the children with him after this meeting. However, the urgency of a business call forced him to cut the visit short and send them back to Nairobi, supposedly putting them on a matatu. To verify Peter's story, Mr. Kiptu sought the passenger list from the 4NT Sacco station, but it was unavailable. This left gaps in Peter's account, leading to growing suspicion and urgency in the investigation. On the afternoon of October 26, investigator Kipto was poring over Mr. Peter's testimony when he stumbled upon a detail that piqued his curiosity. Peter had claimed that he and Joyce Sayombiwa had been at the Kirimana Springs Hotel on that date. Kipto decided to verify this claim, suspecting that it might be a crucial piece of evidence. Upon arriving at the hotel, Kipto requested to review the CCTV footage from the 26th of October. To his dismay, he discovered that the footage had been recorded over, making it impossible to confirm or refute Peter's statement. This situation seemed suspicious, and Kipto wondered if the footage had been deliberately tampered with. Despite the setback, Kipto continued his investigation by questioning the hotel staff. One manager confirmed seeing Peter with a woman who matched Joyce's description. However, this account was unreliable since the manager had never met Joyce before and could not be certain of her identity. This left Kipto with nothing more than hearsay and no corroborative evidence. Determined to find more answers, Kipto decided to visit Peter's house. To do so, he first sought permission from the Laikipia Air Base due to its status as a national security site. Permission was granted, and Kipto proceeded to Peter's residence. Unexpectedly, Peter had left for Nairobi just before Kipto's visit. Sources revealed that Peter had taken leave and was being uncooperative with the investigation. This raised suspicions, especially given the gravity of the situation involving his missing wife and children. Peter, however, made arrangements for Kipto to access his home by contacting a 21-year-old groundskeeper named Collins Pamba. Upon entering Peter's home, Kipto found it impeccably clean, almost too pristine. Despite a thorough search, he found no significant clues. He then turned his attention to the security gate logs and spoke with the gatekeepers. They reported that Joyce had entered the property, but could not confirm her departure. This was intriguing because there was an entry indicating that Joyce had left, but the handwriting on this entry was the same as Peter's. This suggested that Peter might have falsified the records to cover up any potential discrepancies. Earlier in the investigation, Kipto had seized Peter's phone and some documents for analysis. By November 15, Kipto was still struggling to piece together the case. That day, he received instructions from the Laikipia DCI to detain and interrogate Peter, and to confiscate his second phone, as the first had been seized earlier. During his visit to the Laikipia police station, Peter requested to see the first phone, which had been confiscated. In an unusual move, the officer handed it over. Peter then proceeded to delete all the contents of the phone and reset it to factory settings, all while the officer watched. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the officer intervened and seized the phone back from Peter, but by then, crucial evidence had already been erased. The DCI's orders were clear: Peter was to be arrested and interrogated. On November 15, Peter was detained. The following day, November 16, investigators made a chilling discovery. At approximately 4:30 p.m., they unearthed the bodies of Joyce, Shanice, and Michael. The bodies were found buried in shallow graves, wrapped in sacks and ropes in a cemetery in Kilemo, a mere 9 minutes from the Laikipia Air Base. The discovery of the bodies confirmed the investigators' worst fears. The case had taken a tragic turn, and the investigation into Peter's actions and the fate of Joyce and her children took on an even darker dimension. The death of Joyce was nothing short of catastrophic, particularly for Elizabeth. In the midst of this turmoil, Joyce's mother made a heartfelt public plea for assistance. She desperately needed help to transport the bodies of her daughter and grandchildren to Ukambani, where Joyce had wished to be laid to rest. The weight of the loss was immense, and the additional logistical challenges were nearly insurmountable. Although it remains uncertain whether the public's response was sufficient, the bodies were eventually relocated to Ukambani. While the bodies were still in Nanyuki, an autopsy revealed the grim details of their deaths. Joyce had succumbed to internal bleeding from blunt force trauma to the head, a violent end that spoke to the brutality she had faced. Tragically, her 2 children had been strangled with a rope, their lives extinguished in a similarly horrific manner. As the news of Joyce and her children's murders spread, social media buzzed with a shocking and unsettling mix of reactions. Some individuals, fueled by misinformation and malice, began circulating vile accusations against Joyce. One user claimed that Joyce had transmitted HIV to Peter, which supposedly led to his doubts and subsequent violent actions. Another theory suggested that Peter was enraged by the substantial portion of his salary that was allocated to Joyce for the care of their children, fueling his jealousy and anger. Amidst the flurry of speculation and conjecture, the truth began to emerge. A crucial revelation came from a young man named Collins Pamba. Collins, who had previously been involved in showing Inspector Kipto around when Peter's family was missing, became a pivotal figure in the case. At just 21 years old, Collins revealed that he had been an accessory to the gruesome murders. Collins confessed that on the evening of October 26, Peter Mwaura had contacted him in a state of panic, demanding Collins' immediate presence. Peter, who was agitated and secretive, had issued threats to ensure Collins' compliance. When Collins arrived at the meeting location, Peter was absent, but he was soon summoned back to meet Peter at 10 p.m. that night. When Collins finally met Peter, he was led to an apartment that was not Peter's usual residence. Instead of heading to apartment A3, Peter diverted to apartment A4, where he locked Collins inside and directed him to remain silent. In the darkness, Peter used his phone's torch to illuminate the room, leading Collins to discover a horrifying scene: two large black bags in the bathroom, one containing the body of a woman and the other a child. Collins, horrified and panic-stricken, was confronted with the grim reality of a murder scene. Peter, noticing Collins' distress, pressured him into helping dispose of the bodies. Initially resistant, he was threatened with job loss and even violence if he did not comply, but also he offered Collins a job in a military air base as a form of coercive persuasion. Faced with the choice of potentially losing his job or facing personal harm, Collins reluctantly agreed to help Peter. Together, they moved the bodies to a Subaru Impreza, stashing the children's bodies in the car's spare tire compartment. The scene took an even darker turn when Peter led Collins back to apartment A3, revealing the body of Joyce Sayombua covered with a white tarp. The full scope of the crime was laid bare, and Collins, now deeply entangled in the cover-up, had no choice but to assist in the disposal of the bodies. Amidst the chaos of Joyce's death, Peter revealed his complex and troubling emotions. He told Collins that Joyce was someone he had deeply loved, a woman he wanted to marry as his second wife. This revelation was marred by the unsettling truth that Peter had an existing wife, unknown to many. Peter's discontent with Joyce was evident. He accused her of infidelity and claimed she was only interested in his money, a manipulative gold digger who sought to benefit from his wealth to support her children. The accusations extended to suggest that Joyce had ulterior motives, including misleading Peter into believing that her children were his own, and that she tried to disrupt his relationship with his first wife. The narrative thickened as Peter recounted a heated argument between him and Joyce. He alleged that during this altercation, Joyce belittled his manhood and accused him of bribing for falsified paternity results concerning her children. These claims, though a part of Peter's narrative, remained speculative and were layered with his own resentment and anger. Following the grim disposal of Joyce's body, Peter's actions became more calculated. He contacted Collins, reminding him of the paperwork for a military application and providing him with money to facilitate this process. Peter also instructed Collins to clean up the murder scenes, indicating a cold and meticulous approach to covering up the crime. The case took a significant turn when Peter, now arrested along with Collins, faced mounting pressure. Peter's family attempted to shield him, publicly asserting his innocence and portraying him as a virtuous individual. However, this attempt at damage control was undermined when Joyce's mother publicly disputed their claims, revealing the complex personal history and discord between Joyce and Peter's family. As the legal proceedings unfolded, Peter's desperation grew. Facing severe charges and the loss of his military career, Peter sought bail and attempted to influence Collins through his sister. However, Collins' resolve to testify against Peter remained firm. Known for his tendency to cooperate with authorities, Collins' decision to reveal the truth led to a plea deal, drastically reducing his potential sentence from life imprisonment to 5 years. His cooperation painted a damning picture of Peter's actions and intentions. Peter's legal battles extended beyond the criminal charges, as he sued the military for wrongful dismissal. The case was fraught with delays and procedural hurdles, including changes in judges and the complexity of representing oneself in court. The proceedings were shrouded in secrecy, partly due to the sensitive nature of the case involving national security elements related to the airbase, but the case remains unsolved. Throughout this tragic saga, Joyce Sayombiwa's story serves as a somber reminder of the human cost of violence and the intricate web of relationships that can spiral into devastating outcomes. Her life, marked by love, betrayal, and ultimately, murder, underscores the profound consequences of unresolved conflicts and deceit. I'd like to know your thoughts on this story. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.